The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. Hundreds of alien representatives filled the crystal dome, their voices echoing off the ancient walls. At the center stage, 5 council elders sat in their floating chairs, their expressions grave. "We must discuss the humans," announced Elder White, his deep voice cutting through the chatter. The hall fell silent. "They have achieved faster than light travel, and now qualify for membership in our community." Whispers spread through the crowd. Some species shifted nervously in their seats, while others leaned forward with interest. A holographic display activated above the center stage, showing images of Earth and human achievements. "But they are so young," shouted someone from the back. "Their civilization is barely 10,000 years old." Elder Gray raised his hand for silence. "Young, yes, but that is precisely why we must establish this rule today." He paused, looking at each section of the hall. "Never challenge humans directly. This must become our most important law regarding Earth." The hall erupted in confusion. A tall bird-like creature stood up, its golden feathers gleaming under the lights. "Why should we fear such a young species? My people, the Brightwings, have fought wars for millions of years. We have conquered hundreds of worlds." Elder Black turned to face the speaker. "Let me tell you a story," he said, his voice carrying weight from centuries of experience. "When humans first reached their moon, they did it with technology that would make a child's toy look advanced by our standards. Their computers had less power than the simplest food dispensers we use today. The hologram changed to show the Apollo missions. They built ships that barely held together, strapped themselves to massive explosives, and launched themselves into space using math they calculated by hand. They did this knowing the incredible risks, the near certainty of death if even one small thing went wrong." The hall grew quieter as more images played. Humans exploring deep oceans, climbing impossible mountains, running distances that would exhaust most species. "When humans want something," Elder White continued, "they don't stop. They don't understand the concept of impossible. They see barriers as personal insults to be overcome. Their entire history is filled with examples of facing overwhelming odds and winning." The hologram showed scenes from human sports and competitions, athletes pushing through pain, teams working together, individuals achieving what seemed impossible. "But surely in combat," the Brightwing representative began. "Especially in combat," Elder Red interrupted. "Their history of warfare is both tragic and terrifying. When challenged, humans become something else entirely. They don't just fight. They change the rules of fighting itself. They turn their weaknesses into strengths. Where other species would surrender, humans dig deeper." Elder Gray nodded solemnly. "We've watched them split atoms to make weapons, turn their understanding of physics into tools of war, and develop strategies that seem insane until they succeed. But most importantly, they learn. They adapt faster than any species we've ever encountered." The hologram faded, leaving the hall in a dim light. Elder White stood, his ancient form towering over the podium. "This is not about fear. This is about wisdom. Humanity is young, yes, but they are like a child that can lift mountains. They don't yet know their full strength. When challenged, they discover capabilities they didn't know they had. So we just bow to them?" the Brightwing representative asked, his voice filled with disgust. "No," Elder Black replied. "We welcome them. We trade with them. We learn from them. We can compete with them in friendly ways. But we must never, ever back them into a corner. Never make them feel they must prove themselves." The council took a vote. The law passed with an overwhelming majority. As the representatives filed out of the hall, the Brightwing leader remained behind, his golden feathers ruffled with anger. "They can't be that special," he muttered to his aides. "Someone needs to show everyone what humans really are. And I think we might be the ones to do it." The last elder remaining in the hall overheard this. He shook his head sadly and whispered to himself, "They'd never listen. They never understand until it's too late. The humans will show them why we made this rule, and I fear the lesson will be harsh indeed. The mining colony on Titan 7 was having a normal day until the sky filled with golden ships. Hundreds of Brightwing vessels appeared in perfect formation, their metallic hulls gleaming in the light of the system's twin suns. Inside the colony's control room, alarms blared. Captain Miller stood at the main window, his weathered face reflecting in the reinforced glass as he watched more ships arrive. Behind him, operators worked frantically at their stations. "Sir, they formed a complete blockade," reported his second-in-command. "Every exit point is covered. They're hailing us." Miller nodded. "Put them on screen." The main display lit up with the image of a Brightwing commander, his golden feathers arranged in elaborate military patterns. "Human colony," the alien spoke, "you have one planetary rotation to abandon this system. These resources belong to the superior species." The control room fell silent. Miller stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. "Commander, this colony operates under full Galactic Council approval. We have legal rights to mine here." The Brightwing commander made a sound like metallic laughter. "Legal rights? Let me explain something to you primitive creatures. For millions of years, the Brightwings have taken what we want. Your papers mean nothing." "We can discuss this peacefully," Miller offered. "There's enough resources in this system for multiple operations. Peaceful discussion is for the weak." The commander sneered. "But we are not unreasonable. We offer you a challenge in the ancient traditions of spacefaring races. If you win, you keep your colony. When you lose, you leave, not just this system, but all resource-rich systems in this sector." Miller's eyes narrowed. "When we lose, look around you, human. Our fleet outgunned your colony 10 times over. Our warriors trained from birth. Our technology is centuries ahead of yours. You have no chance." The operators watched Miller carefully. Everyone in the room knew about the Galactic Council's rule about challenging humans. They also knew that backing down would mean losing dozens of vital mining operations that Earth desperately needed. "What kind of challenge?" Miller asked. The Brightwing commander's eyes gleamed. 3 trials: combat, strategy, and endurance, each more difficult than the last, to be held on the neutral world of Haven 3, under observation of the Galactic Council. Miller walked closer to the screen. "And if we refuse, then we take what we want anyway, and the galaxy learns that humans are cowards who hide behind rules and papers." The control room erupted in angry mutters. Miller raised his hand for silence. "You understand that by issuing this challenge, you're breaking the Council's primary rule regarding human interaction. Rules are for the weak," the commander declared. "We give you 6 hours to decide. Accept our challenge or watch your colonies burn." The transmission cut off. Miller turned to his crew, seeing the anger in their eyes. He pressed a button on his console. "Get me Earth Command. They need to know what's happening." "Sir," one of the operators spoke up, "the Brightwings don't know, do they?" Miller shook his head. "No, they don't. They don't know about the Special Readiness Division. They don't know we've been preparing for something like this since we first reached the stars." "Should we tell them?" another operator asked. "No," Miller replied, a slight smile forming on his face. "They'd made their choice. Now they get to learn why the Council made that rule in the first place." He looked out at the golden ships blocking their sky. "Send a message to our friends up there. Tell them we accept their challenge, all 3 trials." As the message was sent, Miller's second-in-command stepped closer. "They think they're setting a trap for us." Miller nodded. "Yes, they do. But you know what's funny about traps." He turned to face his crew, his eyes showing a glint of determination. "They only work if you don't see them coming. And humans? We've been seeing this coming for a very long time." The control room buzzed with activity as they began preparations. Above them, the Brightwing ships maintained their blockade, their commanders celebrating what they thought was an easy victory. They had no idea what they had just started. The news of humanity's acceptance spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On Haven 3, representatives from 50 species gathered in the ancient arena complex to witness the formal challenge acceptance ceremony. The Brightwing commander stood proudly in the center of the great hall, his golden feathers reflecting the light from 1,000 floating orbs. "We will make the terms clear," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner. "Each trial will test the very limits of capability." From the opposite side of the hall, Commander Baker walked forward, her uniform crisp and her posture relaxed. The human delegation behind her stood at ease, showing none of the tension the audience expected. "First trial," the Brightwing declared, "hand-to-hand combat. No weapons, no armor, just pure physical ability." He spread his wings, showing off razor-sharp feathers that could cut through steel. "Our champion against yours." "Accepted," Baker replied simply. The Brightwing continued, clearly enjoying himself. Second trial, strategic warfare, a full fleet battle simulation, using our most advanced combat computers. "Accepted," Baker said again, her calm response causing murmurs in the crowd. Final trial, the Brightwing's voice rose dramatically. "Endurance, a survival challenge on the death world of Razor 6, where the atmosphere itself is hostile to life." The audience gasped. Razor 6 was infamous. Even sealed environmental suits could only last hours in its corrosive atmosphere. Several species representatives stood up to protest. This was beyond the bounds of reasonable challenge. Baker smiled. "Accepted. All 3 trials." The hall erupted in chaos. The Galactic Council representative, an ancient being made of living crystal, floated forward. "This goes too far," it chimed. "Razor 6 is forbidden for good reason. No species can survive there for long." "We accept all terms," Baker repeated firmly, "with one addition of our own." The Brightwing commander tilted his head. "You are in no position to add terms." "Oh, but we are," Baker replied. "You see, you issued the challenge. Under galactic law, we have the right to add one condition of our own." The commander waved his wing dismissively. "Speak your term, human. All trials will be broadcast live across the galaxy. Every moment, every detail, completely uncensored." The Brightwing commander laughed. "You want everyone to witness your humiliation. So be it." As the formal documents were signed, a small alien scurried up to Baker. "Commander," it whispered, "you can't be serious. The combat trial alone. Their champion can slice through metal." Baker knelt down to the alien's level. "Did you know," she said quietly, "that humans have been studying Brightwing combat techniques since our first contact? We have facilities dedicated to understanding every species' physical capabilities." "But the fleet simulation," the alien protested. "We've run millions of them. Our pilots train against computer versions of every known ship design in the galaxy. Has anyone told you about human video games?" The alien blinked in confusion. "The entertainment programs." Baker nodded. "We've been simulating space battles for fun since before we had real spaceships. And as for Razor 6, she straightened up, watching the Brightwing delegation celebrate what they thought was their clever trap. "What about Razor 6? The alien asked nervously. "Let's just say humans have a long history of turning hostile environments into opportunities." Across the hall, the Brightwing commander was boasting to his supporters. None of them noticed the quiet confidence in the human delegation, or the way they seemed completely unfazed by the challenges ahead. As the ceremony concluded, Baker met with her team. "Everything is proceeding as expected," she reported. "They think they've set up impossible trials." "Should we tell them about the Special Readiness Division?" one of her officers asked. Baker shook her head. "No, let them keep thinking they have the advantage." They wanted to teach the galaxy a lesson about humanity. She looked out at the departing aliens, many of whom were already placing bets on how quickly humans would fail. "And they will teach a lesson," she continued, "just not the one they intended." Sometimes the best way to understand a rule is to break it and face the consequences. The human delegation left the hall, their steps light and sure, while the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see just what humanity would reveal in the trials ahead. Deep within Earth's Special Readiness Division headquarters, Commander Baker stood before a massive holographic display showing 3 training zones. The facility, hidden beneath the Antarctic ice, hummed with activity as hundreds of personnel prepared for the upcoming trials. "Show me Combat Zone 1, she ordered. The display zoomed in on a massive chamber where a man named Stone was training. His movements were blindingly fast as he sparred with a robotic opponent designed to mimic Brightwing fighting styles. Stone's been studying their combat patterns for 5 years, her assistant reported. He's memorized every recorded Brightwing fight in history. More importantly, he's discovered their weakness. On the screen, Stone demonstrated a peculiar rolling motion that slipped past the robot's guard. Their bone structure, he explained between moves, makes it impossible for them to defend against certain angles of attack. They've never needed to adapt because no other species moves like we do." Baker nodded and turned to the second zone. Here, rows of pilots sat in advanced simulators, their minds linked directly to the computers. "Fleet combat preparation status. Our team has run 10,000 simulations against Brightwing battle patterns," the chief strategist reported. "They rely heavily on their superior technology, but they're predictable. They've never lost a space battle, so they've never evolved their tactics." The simulation showed human ships performing impossible-seeming maneuvers. "We've developed strategies they won't expect," the strategist continued. "Moves they'll think are suicidal until they work." "And the final challenge?" Baker asked, turning to the third zone. This chamber was filled with a swirling, toxic atmosphere matching Razor 6's composition. Inside, technicians worked on what looked like ordinary environmental suits, but with extraordinary modifications. "We've cracked it," the lead scientist announced proudly. "Humans have been dealing with corrosive environments since the Industrial Revolution. We didn't need to fight the atmosphere. We found a way to use it." Baker watched as a test subject entered the chamber wearing one of the suits. The toxic atmosphere seemed to flow around the suit rather than attack it. "Explain," she ordered. "The Brightwings think survival on Razor 6 is about resistance," the scientist said. "But we took a different approach. Our suits don't just protect against the atmosphere, they process it. The more corrosive it gets, the more power our suits generate. We can theoretically stay there indefinitely." An alert sounded, drawing everyone's attention to the main screen. The Brightwing delegation was broadcasting their preparation footage, showing their champions slicing through metal targets, their fleet running complex maneuvers, their survival experts testing heavy-duty shields. "They're trying to intimidate us," Baker's assistant observed. "No," Baker corrected. "They're showing us exactly how they plan to fight. And they have no idea they're giving away their strategies." She turned to address the entire facility. "Everything we've prepared for is about to be put to the test. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy will be decided by what we do next." Stone stepped out of his training zone, his body covered in sensors. "They think they know what humans are capable of," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "They've only seen what we've chosen to show them." The fleet commander joined them, her neural link still glowing. "They believe technology wins wars. They haven't learned that humans can turn any technology to their advantage." The environmental team leader held up one of their specialized suits. "They think they're testing our limits. They don't realize that humans don't accept limits. We break them." Baker looked at each of them, seeing the determination in their eyes. "Remember," she said, "this isn't just about winning. This is about teaching a lesson that the galaxy needs to understand. When the Council made their rule about never challenging humans, they did it to protect others from us, not the other way around." "Let them celebrate early," Baker said quietly. "The real show is about to begin." The arena on Haven 3 was packed with spectators from every corner of the galaxy. The air crackled with tension as the first trial began. In the center ring, the Brightwing champion, flexed his razor-sharp feathers, each one capable of slicing through armor. Across from him stood Stone, looking surprisingly small in simple training clothes. The Brightwing audience laughed at his appearance. Their champion spread his wings in an intimidating display, golden feathers catching the light. "Begin," the ancient referee called. The Brightwing launched forward, his attack patterns perfected over centuries. But Stone wasn't there anymore. He moved in ways that seemed to defy physics, rolling under the slashing feathers, his movements fluid like water. "Impossible," the Brightwing commander shouted from the observation deck. "No one can dodge that fast." But Stone wasn't just dodging. Each movement brought him closer, exploiting angles the Brightwing's body couldn't defend against. The champion's superior reach became a disadvantage as Stone worked inside his guard. Within minutes, the Brightwing champion lay on the ground, unable to move, with Stone holding him in a simple but perfectly executed lock. The arena fell silent. "Victory, human competitor," the referee announced. Before anyone could recover from the shock, the second trial began. The fleet simulation filled the massive holographic arena. The Brightwing fleet appeared in perfect formation, their most advanced ships gleaming with power. The human fleet seemed to be in disarray, ships moving in apparently random patterns. The Brightwing commander laughed. "Their formation is chaos. Begin the attack." But as their ships advanced, the human fleet's random movements suddenly made sense. Each ship was exactly where it needed to be. The chaotic pattern transformed into a perfect trap. "Impossible maneuvers," a Brightwing tactician screamed. "Those turns would tear ships apart." "Only Brightwing ships," the human fleet commander replied calmly over the comm. "We built our ships differently. We designed them to do exactly this." The simulation ended with the entire Brightwing fleet boxed in, unable to move without destroying themselves. Another clear human victory. The final trial loomed. On Razor 6's surface, both teams prepared to deploy. The Brightwings emerged in massive environmental suits, layers of shields humming with power. The humans walked out in suits that looked almost fragile in comparison. The Brightwing commander immediately called for an inspection, certain the humans were cheating. "The suits are legal," the Galactic Council representative confirmed. "They simply use different principles." As both teams ventured into the corrosive atmosphere, the Brightwings struggled against the hostile environment. Their shields sparked and deteriorated under the constant assault. But the humans walked easily, their suits seeming to work better as conditions worsened. After 2 hours, the Brightwing team was forced to retreat, their shields failing. The humans continued their survey work as if they were taking a pleasant stroll. "How?" the Brightwing commander demanded. "How is this possible?" Baker stepped forward to explain. "Your shields fight against the atmosphere. Our suits work with it. The more corrosive it gets, the more power we generate. We could stay here for weeks if needed." The Galactic Council representative floated forward. "The trials are complete. Humanity has won all 3 challenges." In the observation room, aliens from across the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Brightwing commander slumped in his seat, his golden feathers dulled with defeat. "You knew," he said quietly to Baker. "You knew you would win from the start." Baker nodded. "We've been preparing for challenges like this since we reached the stars. Not because we wanted them, but because we knew someone would eventually ignore the Council's warning." The rule, the Brightwing commander realized. Never challenge humans. It wasn't because you're weak. "No," Baker agreed. "It's because we never stop preparing, never stop adapting, never accept that something is impossible. The rule exists to prevent exactly what happened here today." As the news spread across the galaxy, a new understanding spread with it. The Council's rule wasn't a protection for humans. It was a protection for everyone else, and the Brightwings had learned this lesson the hard way. In the aftermath of the trials, the Brightwing High Council gathered in their golden palace on their homeworld. Screens displayed data from the competition, and the mood was heavy with the weight of their defeat. "Show me the human combat footage again," ordered the head counselor, his feathers drooping. The holographic display replayed Stone's victory, but this time with detailed analysis overlays. A technical expert pointed at the readings. "Look at his muscle strain indicators. The human was only using about 40% of his maximum capability. He was holding back." The room fell silent as this information sank in. Another analyst stepped forward, bringing up the fleet battle data. The human ship's power readings tell a similar story. They never went above 30% thrust. Their weapon systems were running at minimal power. "Impossible," whispered the Brightwing commander who had issued the challenge. "Why would they hold back?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A junior researcher burst into the chamber, clutching data crystals. "Honored Council, I found something in the historical archives, something about humans." The displays changed to show old footage from Earth, images of human sports competitions, training exercises, and historical battles filled the screens. "They have a concept," the researcher explained, called good sportsmanship. When facing a weaker opponent, they deliberately limit themselves to make the contest fair. They were trying to give us a chance." The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The head counselor raised his wing for silence. "Show me the Razor 6 data." New images appeared, showing detailed scans of the human environmental suits. A senior scientist pointed at various components. Their suits weren't just surviving the atmosphere. They were cleaning it. The longer they stayed, the less corrosive the air around them became. They could have terraformed the entire planet if we'd given them enough time. "And they never told us," the commander said quietly. "They let us think we had the advantage." "Why?" An ancient Brightwing elder stepped forward. "Because they understood something we didn't. The true purpose of competition isn't to crush your opponent. It's to elevate both parties." More data poured in from other sources. Records showed humans had been studying Brightwing culture, technology, and biology for years. They had developed countless strategies and technologies specifically designed to counter Brightwing advantages, but had never used them aggressively. "Look at these training facilities," one analyst said, bringing up images of Earth's Special Readiness Division. "They have similar programs for every spacefaring race. Not to fight us, but to be ready if anyone became hostile." The head counselor stood, his wings spread wide. "We thought we were teaching them a lesson about superiority. Instead, they taught us something about wisdom." A message arrived from Earth. Commander Baker's face appeared on the main screen. "Honorable Council," she said, "we hope there are no hard feelings about the trials. We would like to propose a joint training program between our species. We believe we could learn much from each other." The council members looked at each other in surprise. The commander who had issued the challenge stepped forward. "After what we did, you would still share knowledge with us." Baker smiled. "Of course. In human history, some of our closest allies started as opponents. It's not about who wins or loses. It's about how we move forward together." The head counselor moved to respond, but Baker held up her hand. "There's something else you should know. Those suits we used on Razor 6. Our engineers think they could be modified to work with Brightwing physiology. Your people could help us explore and clean up toxic worlds, if you're interested." Understanding finally dawned on the Brightwing leaders. Humans hadn't just beaten them. They had opened a door to possibilities the Brightwings had never imagined. "We accept," the head counselor said firmly. "And we owe the galaxy an apology. We broke the one rule about humans, not understanding its true meaning." As the transmission ended, the elder spoke again. "The rule wasn't about human strength. It was about human potential. Not just for victory, but for turning enemies into friends." The council chamber slowly emptied, leaving the leaders to contemplate how close they had come to making a terrible mistake, and how humans had turned that mistake into an opportunity for growth. 1 year after the trials, the Galactic Council held a special session to mark the anniversary. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from every spacefaring race, but something had changed. Where once the Brightwings sat apart from others, they now mingled freely with the crowd. On the main stage, Commander Baker and the Brightwing High Counselor stood together, presenting the results of their joint ventures over the past year. Behind them, a hologram showed teams of humans and Brightwings working side by side on Razor 6, their modified environmental suits transforming the deadly atmosphere into breathable air. In 1 year, Baker announced, our combined teams have made more progress than either species could have achieved alone in a decade. The Brightwing's natural ability to sense atmospheric changes, combined with human environmental processing technology, has revolutionized planetary restoration. The High Counselor stepped forward, his golden feathers gleaming with pride, but a different kind of pride than before. We thought we knew everything about combat and strategy, but humans taught us that true strength lies in knowing when not to fight. Footage played showing human and Brightwing pilots training together, each species learning from the other's techniques. What had started as a challenge had evolved into one of the most successful cooperation programs in galactic history. Elder White, one of the original council members who had established the rule about humans, floated to the center stage. The rule remains, he announced. Never challenge humans directly. But now we understand why. Not because they will defeat you, but because they will transform the challenge itself. In the audience, the commander who had originally issued the challenge watched with new understanding. He turned to his human colleague. You could have destroyed us that day. Our military, our pride, our reputation. Why didn't you? Stone, who had won the combat trial, smiled. Because that's not what humans do. We don't want to be the strongest or the most feared. We want to be better and help others become better too. The presentation continued, showing new joint projects. Brightwing ships now carried human-designed adaptive systems, while human vessels incorporated Brightwing sensor technology. Their combined fleet had become the galaxy's most effective rescue and exploration force. The greatest victory, Baker explained to the assembly, isn't defeating an enemy. It's turning a potential enemy into a trusted friend. A young alien child in the audience raised their hand. But what happens if someone else challenges humans? The High Counselor answered before Baker could speak. Then they will learn the same lesson we did. Humans don't just win challenges, they transform them into opportunities. As the session concluded, news spread across the galaxy of a new joint human Brightwing Academy. It would teach not just combat and strategy, but diplomacy, cooperation, and mutual understanding. Species that had once viewed each other with suspicion now applied to join the program. In the Council archives, the rule about humans was updated. Below, never challenge humans directly. A new line appeared. But if you do, be prepared to learn, grow, and change in ways you never expected. Baker and the High Counselor left the hall together, discussing plans for future projects. Behind them, humans and Brightwings chatted, laughed, and shared stories as if they had been friends for centuries rather than former opponents. You know, the High Counselor said thoughtfully, breaking that rule was the best mistake we ever made. Baker nodded. Sometimes you have to break a rule to truly understand why it exists. As the sun set on the Galactic Council headquarters, ships of all species flew past, human vessels dancing gracefully alongside Brightwing cruisers, their contrasting designs now complementing each other perfectly. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The rule about never challenging humans wasn't a warning about their strength in battle. It was a reminder that humans had a unique ability to turn any challenge into an opportunity for everyone to become something better than they were before. And as new species joined the galactic community, the first thing they learned wasn't to fear humans, but to understand that a challenge from or to humanity might just be the beginning of an amazing journey of transformation.